They left us. Just like that. No warnings, no explanations, nothing. The Galactic Council, that shining collection of the so-called wise and advanced civilizations, turned their backs on Earth the moment things got messy. One minute we were their curious little project, their favorite underdog species who got a seat at the table. The next, we were nothing. Abandoned, ignored, blacklisted. It started with the outbreak wars, a viral weapon spread across 3 systems, billions infected, millions dead in days. We didn't make the virus. Hell, we didn't even have the tech to, but somehow, we were blamed. The Council said it was a containment decision, that Earth was too unstable to remain a part of the galactic community. They sealed off our jump gates, cut our comms, and imposed tech lockdown protocols. And just like that, we were alone. People panicked, economies crashed, nations turned inward, desperate to survive the sudden loss of alien tech that had powered everything from medicine to food production. Earth fell into chaos within weeks. But humans, we don't go quietly. We adapted. Not because we wanted to, because we had to. The Council thought we'd destroy ourselves. They expected riots, famines, extinction. Maybe they even hoped for it. That's what pissed us off the most. Not just the betrayal, but the arrogance. The way they assumed we were beneath survival without their guidance. They forgot what we're really made of. It started in the shadows. Underground labs, rogue scientists, tech salvaged from old black market alien traders. And then came the Genesis Directive, a global effort to stop waiting for aliens to give us power and start building our own. It wasn't about peace anymore. That dream died with the betrayal. It was about strength. About never letting another species decide our fate again. 2 years in, Earth changed. We were no longer the naive species trying to impress the galaxy. We were angry, focused, brutal in our determination. The first real breakthrough came from what was left of the Atlas Institute in Siberia. They built something different. Not a weapon, not exactly. They called it a singularity engine, a power source strong enough to light a planet, and flexible enough to power anything from drones to space warships. Pure human design. No alien parts, no council permissions. And the second breakthrough? That was darker. Project Echo. Genetic acceleration, controlled evolution. We stopped waiting for nature to catch up and started rewriting ourselves. Stronger bodies, faster reflexes, mind-to-machine interfaces. And with every step, we stopped looking like the humans the galaxy once knew. There were protests, sure. Some people still believed in peace, still believed we could fix things. But they were quiet voices in a world getting louder with rage. I was there when the first Earth-forged warship launched from the Mars dry docks. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't sleek like the Council's designs, but it was solid, deadly, ours. We called it Vengeance, because that's what it was, a message. We weren't coming back to beg for peace. We were coming to take what we were owed. They didn't see us coming. By the time Vengeance reached the edge of the Valari Expanse, a stretch of Council-protected space that once denied Earth access, we had already disabled 3 silent sentries and a long-range comm relay. Quiet, clean, not a single alarm raised. The ship's AI, nicknamed Wraith, ran dark mode operations smoother than anything they'd ever built. That's the thing about humans. When we get serious, we learn fast. I stood on the bridge, watching the stars blur past. It felt surreal. 2 years ago, I was an officer in a UN peacekeeping fleet. Now I was second in command on a warship designed to terrify civilizations older than our species' entire recorded history. "Target in range," said Juno, our weapons officer. Her voice was calm, steady. Too steady for someone about to fire on a diplomatic station. That was our first real strike, a council node. Small, unguarded, but critical. The kind of station that quietly managed regional policy, supply lanes, refugee traffic. Symbolic more than strategic. We didn't want strategy. We wanted them to know we were still here. "Lock fusion lance on primary tower," I ordered. Captain Reyes didn't say a word. She just nodded. And Juno pulled the trigger. The lance tore through space like a sunbeam, and the station exploded in a blaze of white and orange. No chance for evacuation, no survivors. We weren't proud of it, but we were beyond pride now. This was about power. Within hours, the Council knew. And oh, they panicked. We intercepted transmissions, frantic, fearful, scrambling to understand how primitive humans had managed a successful strike against their infrastructure. Their arrogance had blinded them for so long, they assumed we were still struggling to purify drinking water. But we had done more than catch up. We had surpassed them in the one thing they feared most: weaponization of will. The next few weeks were a blur of skirmishes. Vengeance was just one ship, but it was a ghost, jumping in and out of slipstreams, striking fast, then vanishing. The Council couldn't trace us, couldn't predict us. They weren't used to fighting enemies with no central command, no bureaucracy, no hesitation. Back on Earth, news of our success turned into fire in people's veins. Recruitment surged. Factories ran non-stop. The Genesis Directive moved into Phase 2, reinforcement. They called them Sentinels, humanoid warforms, part machine, part enhanced human, built to survive zero-gravity combat and powered by microcores, reverse-engineered from our own Singularity engine. The first Sentinel deployment happened during the siege of Karath Station, an old Council defense post now controlled by the arrogant Zathari species. Cold, insectoid things who once told Earth's ambassador we were barely conscious primates with a taste for violence. We never forgot that. The Sentinels landed without warning. They breached the hull using synchronized impact units, tore through walls, and disabled the station's shields in under 5 minutes. Only one was damaged. The rest walked out of the flames like gods. The Council issued a declaration that same week. They branded us as hostile and rogue, demanded Earth surrender all military projects, and reintegrate under supervision. Reyes broadcast our reply. She didn't scream. She didn't threaten. She just looked into the feed and said one sentence. "You abandoned us. Now you will respect us." The line went viral across neutral systems. Some species cheered. Others called us monsters. We didn't care. The next warship was already waiting. Its name? Retribution. And we were just getting started. The launch of Retribution shook the solar system in a way no alien war ever had. Built entirely on Saturn's moon Titan, it dwarfed Vengeance in both size and capability. Triple reinforced hull, adaptive shielding, dark matter torpedoes, and a pulse cannon that could erase a city in under 3 seconds. But more than its weaponry, it was the symbol that mattered most. It wasn't just a warship. It was humanity's announcement to the stars. We're no longer asking. Inside the ship, you could feel the tension. The crew wasn't made of career soldiers. These were survivors, engineers who lost their families when the Council pulled support from medical stations, refugees who lived through power grid collapses, orphans who had never seen a sky without smoke. They didn't fight for medals. They fought because Earth had bled, and no one came to help. I met Commander Cade just 2 days before the ship's maiden jump. He was a quiet man with fire in his eyes, and scars he didn't talk about. They said he'd been on Europa when the Council's blockade starved out 2 million colonists. He was one of maybe 400 who made it out. He never smiled, never drank, and never questioned orders. Just worked, calculated, waited. "We're not trying to start a war," he told me in that low, gravelly voice. "But if one comes, we'll end it on our terms." The Council still hadn't figured out what to do with us. They were in disarray, their leadership fractured between fear and disbelief. To them, Earth had always been a problem to manage, not a threat to fear. That thinking was crumbling fast. Their first mistake was sending the Arachons, cold-blooded reptilians, twice the size of any human, wrapped in ceremonial armor like walking tanks. The Council sent them to intimidate us. Peacekeepers, they said. They intercepted a civilian mining convoy outside of Neptune and demanded a surrender. What they got instead was a detachment of 5 sentinels dropped from Retribution, like meteors. The Arachons didn't even have time to fire. We broadcast the footage galaxy-wide. The message? Humanity protects its own now. Suddenly, neutrality became harder for the Council to enforce. Fringe planets, long bullied or ignored by the core species, started asking us for help. Not because they trusted us, but because they feared what we'd become. That fear was power, and we were done apologizing for using it. On Earth, people were changing, not just politically, biologically. The second wave of echo enhancements had begun. More volunteers, more mutations. I'd seen a man in a med bay regrow a shattered femur in under 30 seconds. I'd watched a child communicate with a ship's interface using only her thoughts. Some said we were losing our humanity, that we were becoming the monsters the Council feared. Maybe we were. But after being abandoned, ridiculed, nearly erased, what did humanity owe anyone? Retribution's first mission came 3 weeks later, not a strike this time, a reclamation. Alpha Prime, an Earth-aligned station seized by the Council 2 years ago, turned into a surveillance post. It had been built by human hands, funded by Earth, operated by our people, until they locked us out and filled it with Council tech. Commander Cade led the charge himself. No diplomacy, no warnings, just 5 minutes of thunder. We breached its outer shell with kinetic hammers, disabling their gravity core and draining their shields. No sentinels needed, just human soldiers, enhanced and fearless, storming every corridor like the ghosts of a betrayed past. No one survived on their side. And we didn't take prisoners. We raised Earth's flag in the command deck and streamed it to every Council world. That night, the Council met in emergency session. They accused us of war crimes. We didn't respond, because they never responded when we cried for help. The stars had long belonged to the arrogant and the ancient. Now they were hearing a new name whispered in the shadows. Earth. Not the weaklings of old, not the planet that begged for inclusion, but the species that rose from ashes and built fire. And that fire was just beginning to spread. They tried to negotiate. After Alpha Prime fell, the Council couldn't keep ignoring the bleeding. They sent an envoy ship, gilded and soft, full of words and warnings. The ship hovered just outside Earth's orbit, broadcasting pleasantries wrapped in threats. They spoke of unity, of compromise, of reassimilation under conditional terms. Commander Cade didn't even bother responding. He let Retribution charge its main cannon, aimed it at the envoy's shadow, and left it sitting there, glowing like a coiled serpent. It was a message. Talk soft all you want, but come one step closer, and we bite. The envoy turned back, humiliated. Behind closed doors, we heard the Council was furious. Their pride had been shattered, their narrative ruined. The galaxy's media once painted humans as brash, backward, unstable. But now? Now we were the fire everyone whispered about, the spark-lighting old wounds in places the Council thought were fully tamed. Rebellion started breaking out in the fringe systems, mostly small, mostly crushed quickly. But they spread doubt, the kind that couldn't be erased with speeches. Every new fire started with the same 3 words. Earth stood alone, and it did something deep to our species. We stopped looking outward for validation. We stopped asking aliens for permission to be something great. Instead, we looked inward and started rewriting the rules. Earth's skies were filled with silent black ships now. The moon was a fortress. Mars was a factory. Jupiter's orbit was littered with satellite cannons and anti-fleet drones. We didn't just prepare for war. We became war. Even the average citizen changed. Unity came, not from government, but from survival. You'd see a mechanic in New Africa fitted with neural gloves that could fix a fusion engine with a thought. Farmers in Alaska using biosuits that could breathe life into dead soil. Children learning orbital tactics before algebra. The old Earth, the divided one, the hesitant one. That Earth was gone. But not everyone was ready to accept it. Reyes received a transmission from an old ally, Admiral Thale, one of the few non-human council members who had once argued for Earth's inclusion. A Ivanti, slim, six-limbed, all silver skin and soulful eyes. He begged for peace, said the council was ready to make real changes this time. "We see now," he said in his strange, melodic voice, "what humanity is capable of. Let us not escalate this further. You have made your point." Cade watched the message in silence. Then he shut it off. I asked him later why he didn't even reply. He looked at me, tired but sharp as ever, and said, "They only understand dominance. And we're not done teaching." Our next target was different, not strategic, not military. Karthal, one of the oldest council homeworlds, a jewel of architecture, knowledge, diplomacy. It was where the vote to abandon Earth was cast, where they laughed at our pleas, where they called us too emotional for advanced civilization. We didn't attack the surface. That wasn't the plan. Instead, we took their orbital ring, a massive structure housing libraries, delegates, schools, and more than 10,000 of their best minds. We didn't bomb it. We took it, sealed the exits, disabled the communications, jammed every emergency frequency. Then we opened a wide-band channel to the entire council. Reyes herself delivered the message. "This isn't conquest," she said coldly. "This is justice, for every child who died in darkness, for every call that went unanswered, for every life you dismissed as unworthy." The council scrambled, of course. They sent fleets, tried diplomatic tricks, threatened blockades. But we'd already mined the entire orbital lane. Any ship that came too close was swallowed in silent fire. Inside the ring, we didn't harm a soul. We just let them sit there, powerless, terrified, remembering every time they'd let humans feel the same. And then, after 3 days of silence, we opened the airlocks, not to space, but to our soldiers. They walked through the halls, silent and armored, delivering supplies and demands. One by one, the ring's leaders surrendered their knowledge, their data cores, their secrets. One by one, they bent. And still the council called us savages. Still, they couldn't believe what humanity had become. But the galaxy was starting to believe, because power doesn't come from being liked, it comes from being feared. And we were no longer the ones running. Fear spread faster than light. After Karthal's orbital ring fell under our control, the council tried to spin it as a humanitarian failure. A terrible misunderstanding, as they called it. But no one believed them. The footage leaked. It always did. Every second of their brightest minds, trembling under the gaze of human soldiers in black armor, was seen across the stars. And it wasn't rage that followed. It was awe. Because for the first time in centuries, the invincible council had been humbled, without a single shot fired inside that ring. Some species called us tyrants. Others started reaching out in secret. Small colonies on the edges of council space, ignored, underfunded, dismissed for being too poor or too remote, began to ask for our protection. Not because they loved us, but because they saw in us something no one had ever seen in the council. Consequences. We didn't protect for free, though. Earth had changed. And our mercy had a price. For every world that wanted our shield, we demanded their silence. No loyalty to the Council, no interference, just quiet allegiance and open doors when the time came. And one by one, they agreed. That was how the Black Chain started. A hidden alliance of systems spread out like a loose necklace around the Council's throat. Each link strong enough to hold just long enough, each one just loyal enough not to betray us. On Earth, we stopped pretending this was about defense. We were expanding, whether the galaxy liked it or not. The day Leviathan launched was the day I knew we had passed the point of no return. Larger than retribution, slower but unstoppable, Leviathan was a floating fortress, designed not for war, but for occupation. It held cities inside its hull, farms, labs, barracks for 20,000 sentinels. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a nation in motion, a statement carved from steel and will, and its first destination was Sereth Prime, a cultural capital of the Council, untouched by war. A place where diplomats, artists, and historians gathered like it was still a golden age. We sent a message to their High Counselor before Leviathan even broke orbit. We do not want your surrender. We want your silence. Stand down or fall hard. They didn't believe we'd actually do it. Sereth had never been attacked. Not once in its long, smug history. It was protected by legacy treaties, sacred laws, all that diplomatic theater the Council swore by. But we didn't play by those rules anymore. When Leviathan entered orbit, their planetary shield activated. 3 full planetary guard squadrons moved to intercept. Elegant ships, silver and gold, beautiful and doomed. We launched the Eclipse bomb, not nuclear, not biological, temporal. An Earth-made device that folded a local time stream for 6 seconds, just long enough to freeze enemy systems and blind every ship within a 500-kilometer radius. By the time their sensors came back online, their fleet was gone. Leviathan hovered over the capital like a god staring down from heaven. And we didn't fire. We waited. 1 hour, 2, 3. Then their counselors called. They agreed to neutrality, agreed to provide resources discreetly, agreed to open their ports to human vessels. No treaty signed, no ceremony, just quiet defeat. That was our strategy now, not burning cities, but forcing choices. They could resist and be destroyed, or survive and be forgotten. And more of them chose the latter. But not everyone. Deep in Council space, a few species still had backbone. The Avanti, the Dakara, the Varn. They called for a unified strike, a final crushing blow to bring humanity back in line. They began preparing the Omega Protocol, a joint force of 30 ships, 5 elite fleets, and 3 experimental weapons. They called it a peace enforcement armada. We called it a mistake, because we knew it was coming, and for the first time, we wouldn't run. We'd meet them head-on, right in the open, and show the galaxy what humanity had become when peace was no longer an option. They brought everything. The Omega Protocol wasn't just a fleet. It was a message, wrapped in warheads and arrogance. 30 ships, each from a different Council species, old enemies now pretending to be allies. They moved through the stars like an unstoppable wave, heading straight for Proxima Yard, our outermost station, still under construction. They thought they could catch us off guard, that we'd panic, that we'd try to negotiate. But Earth didn't build Leviathan just to hide. We'd been waiting for this, watching, listening, planning. For months, our operatives inside Council space had fed us intel piece by piece. From ship specs to fleet routes, we knew their whole playbook before they ever crossed the Helios line. By the time the first sensor pinged them near Proxima, every satellite had already gone dark. Not from fear, from design. We shut our own eyes, so they wouldn't see where we were looking. And then vengeance, retribution, and Leviathan appeared from the dark like nightmares made flesh, 3 ships, human-built, covered in black alloys that didn't reflect light, didn't make sound. Death, quiet, and waiting. The Omega Armada expected a space battle. What they got was a trap. The first strike came from Leviathan's underbelly, thousands of microdrones launched like dust into the void, each one smaller than a human hand, programmed for one purpose: breach and blind. They latched onto the enemy ships, drilling through sensors, chewing into circuits, flooding systems with false data. Within minutes, the lead fleet lost targeting. Comms scrambled, formation broken, and that's when vengeance lit up the stars. Its fusion lances fired in coordinated bursts, shearing straight through the flagship of the Varn. No warnings, no mercy, just clean, surgical eradication. 1 second it existed. The next, it was dust. The Dakara tried to retaliate, swinging their ion frigates into a flanking formation. Clever. Fast. But we had sentinels. Cade had them loaded into rail pods. No ships, no suits. Just human bodies enhanced to survive vacuum for 3 minutes and hit with enough velocity to pierce armor like missiles. They tore into the Dakara ships like blades through cloth. No one had ever fought like this. Not the Council, not any of the so-called elder races. They played by old rules, calculated, diplomatic, political. We fought like animals who had been caged and spat on for too long. Because we had been. The battle lasted 24 minutes. By the end, 15 Council ships were drifting in silence. 9 had retreated. 3 were captured. Only 3 had the sense to flee before it began. Leviathan didn't chase them. It hovered in the wreckage like a sovereign among corpses, collecting what was left, sending a new message across every known channel. Let this be the last time you mistake our patience for weakness. The galaxy shook. The Council convened an emergency broadcast, trying to project calm, trying to keep control. They claimed the Omega Protocol had been a rogue operation, denied authorization, called it a tragic misunderstanding. But no one believed that anymore. Not after seeing Earth's ships glide through elite Council fleets like a scalpel through rot. We didn't answer their statements. We didn't have to. The stars were answering for us. And while the diplomats scrambled and leaders panicked, Earth began its next phase. Cade called it Project Ashes. Simple goal: find every abandoned or broken colony the Council had ever discarded. Heal them. Arm them. Offer them protection not with words, but with presence. And in return, they'd fly our flag. Not out of loyalty, but because we were the only force the Council feared. It worked better than anyone expected. Dozens of old colonies reached out, scared, hungry, ignored for generations. And one by one, Leviathan arrived like a dark angel, carrying food, medicine, and warning beacons. Earth stands here now. Harm them and you burn. This wasn't conquest. This was evolution. Humanity had been rejected by the galaxy, humiliated, cut off. But now we weren't just surviving. We were shaping the order that once spat us out, and they could either make room or be erased from the map entirely. The stars grew quiet, not peaceful, just silent, like the universe was holding its breath. Since the fall of the Omega Armada, no major Council force had dared to engage us again. The once proud alliance of species who ruled the galactic core retreated behind their borders, rattled and confused. They kept up appearances, held meetings, issued statements. But it was all theater now, because deep down, they all knew one truth. Humanity wasn't a mistake. We were a reckoning, and reckoning doesn't knock. It breaks the door off the hinges. But there was one voice, still defiant. One system that refused to bend. The Avanti homeworld, Auralis. They had once been Earth's only allies in the Council. Their vote, Their sympathy, their sweet words had earned our respect, even hope. But when the council cut us off, they didn't stop it. They didn't stand up. They just watched. And now they claimed moral high ground, accused us of overreach, of brutality, of becoming what we once fought. They called us the New Dominion, as if that was supposed to shame us. Cade didn't flinch. "Let them speak," he said in the command chamber. "Words are their last weapon. Let's show them how empty it really is." So vengeance and retribution were ordered to hold. Leviathan set a new course. Oralis. This wasn't about conquest or destruction. It was about closure. When Leviathan arrived in the Oralis system, it didn't open fire. It didn't threaten. It simply waited. Silent. Massive. I watched from the observation deck as the blue-green planet turned slowly in the dark, its rings casting pale shadows on the hull. So beautiful. So untouched. Oralis responded the way the Council always did. By pretending everything was still under control, they activated planetary defenses, deployed satellites, sent out diplomats in ships painted with peace symbols, old emblems of a unity that no longer existed. Reyes stood on the bridge with Cade, watching the envoy's message scroll across the main screen. "Let us speak with clarity, not violence," it read. "Let us return to reason." But Earth was done with reason, so Reyes sent a different kind of reply. A shuttle, not full of soldiers, full of names. 50,000 names etched in steel. Civilians, children, engineers, scientists, all the people who died after the Council cut Earth off during the outbreak wars. Not warriors, not threats, just people, dead from neglect, indifference, silence. That shuttle descended slowly, unarmed, unmanned. It landed in the center of Oralis's Unity Plaza, and when their guards approached, the hatch opened automatically. Inside was one message. "This is who you let die. Speak their names before you speak to us." The broadcast reached billions. Across every system, every news feed, it was raw, ruthless, and honest. And that honesty hurt them more than any weapon could. That night, 1,000 systems turned away from the Council. Not toward Earth, not yet, but away from the lie they'd believed in for so long. The Council tried to counter with more propaganda, but it fell flat. Their power was fading, not just militarily, but morally. Their entire identity was crumbling. And in the middle of that collapse, Earth made its move. We didn't conquer. We invited. We sent envoys, not with demands, but with solutions. Need energy? We'll send singularity cores. Need security? We'll send sentinels to patrol your skies. Need food, medicine, power, peace? We are here now. No votes, no approval, no conditions. Only one promise: we will never abandon you. And that promise, whispered across the dark between stars, broke the last grip of Council control. Rebellions sparked like wildfire. On Denari, civilians overthrew their own planetary governor and replaced him with a human-trained scientist. On Jorith, soldiers laid down arms and raised Earth's banner, begging for integration into our Black Chain Alliance. And in the quiet corridors of the crumbling Council's chamber, whispers turned to panic. "They're not just fighting anymore," said one alien delegate. "They're replacing us." Because that's what we had become. Not rebels, not victims, not even conquerors. We were the new center, and in the shadow of Leviathan, the galaxy had a choice: follow us or vanish. It didn't end with an explosion, not with a declaration, not with another battle in space or fleets colliding in fire. It ended in a whisper. The day the Council fell was colder than we expected, not in temperature, but in spirit. Because for all the hatred we carried, all the rage and purpose and fire that had brought us this far, when the dust finally settled, there was no joy, no victory speech, just a silence that spread across the stars, deeper than any void. The last council broadcast came from their central moon station, Auraxis Prime. A dying place, cracked from years of neglect, orbiting a fading red sun. The message was short. No fanfare. No apology. We relinquish governance of galactic affairs. The era of council rule has ended. That was it. After thousands of years, they simply let go. Not because they wanted peace, not because they saw reason, because they had no choice, no fleets left, no economy, no influence. Their allies were gone, their legacy shattered. The people of the galaxy, the ones they forgot, ignored, or ruled from above, had found something else to believe in. United States, the humans, the mistake, the survivors. But we didn't cheer. There were no celebrations on Earth, no parades on Mars, not even in the colonies we'd liberated, who now flew our flag in silence. Instead, the galaxy took a breath, a deep, uncertain breath, because power had shifted, and no one, not even us, knew what came next. Commander Cade stood before the assembly on the moon city of Tyros, now the de facto capital of the new alliance. He didn't wear a uniform, didn't even raise his voice. "We didn't come to rule," he said, his voice dry and hard. "We came because no one else did, and we stayed because we remember what it feels like to be forgotten." The assembly chamber, a ring of voices from 100 liberated worlds, listened in stillness. Even the ones who had feared us, even the ones who once fought us, because whether they liked us or not, they believed us. And belief in this new galaxy was more powerful than any weapon. Reyes stood next to him, arms crossed, eyes heavy. She'd lost so much along the way. A brother to the virus, a son to starvation during the blackouts. She wasn't interested in thrones. She wanted justice. But justice doesn't always look like fire. Sometimes it looks like rebuilding. So we began. We didn't rebuild the council. We built something new. No high council, no elite circle. Just the Accord, an open forum run by AI oversight, human-engineered but non-partisan. Every world got a vote. Every species a say. Earth had 3, same as any other major world state. No more, no less. It was messy, loud, democratic in the worst and best ways. And it worked, because fear may have won us the war, but fairness would win the peace. Still, not everyone trusted it. There were those who said we traded one empire for another, that our sentinels, now stationed on dozens of worlds, were a shadow army, that the Accord was just Earth in disguise. And maybe in some ways they were right. We hadn't forgotten what was done to us, and we weren't about to risk it happening again. So we stayed sharp. Leviathan remained in orbit over the inner colonies, our silent guardian. New vessels were launched, Endurance, Resolve, Judgment, not as warships, as deterrents. We called them peace anchors, but make no mistake, they were armed, because peace without strength is just a pause before the next betrayal, and we would never be betrayed again. Back on Earth, something strange happened. For the first time in our history, there were no wars, not between nations, not over resources, not even over ideology, because humanity had faced something larger than itself, had been exiled, mocked, nearly erased, and survived, and survival breeds unity. Africa became the center of agricultural recovery, its deserts now green with vertical farms powered by singularity reactors. Asia became the engine of infrastructure, rebuilding colonies and crafting orbital cities. South America led medical science, pushing echogenetics into disease reversal and neural growth. Even Antarctica held value. Now home to the cryovaults, storing the DNA of 100 species we once thought we'd never meet. And for the first time, every child born under Earth's gravity had a future bigger than its sky. I walked the streets of New London one afternoon, years after the fall. Children laughed. Trains floated. The air smelled clean again. But what I remembered most were the murals. On nearly every building, they painted faces. Not generals or leaders. Just people. Forgotten people. Victims, survivors. The names we once sent to Oralis in that quiet shuttle of shame. We never let ourselves forget. Because the moment we do, we become them. The ones who once ruled and watched and let others die. And humanity had decided. We'd rather be feared than forgotten, but never feared by the ones under our care. We held the galaxy now, yes, but gently. Not because we were weak, but because we knew exactly what strength can do when no one holds it accountable. That was our legacy, not vengeance, not power, but memory. Because we remembered what it felt like to scream for help into the void and have the stars turn away. And we swore, as long as we breathed, that would never happen again. Not to us, not to anyone.